There. Now we have.
Don't leave us.
There we go. All right, so just to say, we have a new microphone system that we're trying out here today.
How do the videos work in this room?
Well, there's the video now. Look at that. That's a little different.
Well, it's live streaming though.
Yeah.
Playing other people's videos is what I
The
meant.
video is better.
Oh, yeah, that one.
If you didn't mind, not the lip syncing.
We're getting a lot of roof in that. We may want to tip it down in future.
Oh, that's better.
HPTZ. Oh, nice, nice. Like even more, I would say. I didn't know. That front row. I think, oh, it's good.
How come you're online? You look like you're
Oh,
online.
it's-
I'm logged in as well. I'm just logged in. I don't have my camera.
Yeah, that's too much. Turn that off.
I agree.
Okay,
I love your
Genevieve.
gadgets. All right. Okay, council.
There we go. Except the
have
mayor
a-
looks 12.
We have an agenda that's.
Time to get some updated photos.
We have an agenda that's been circulated. Any errors or omissions from the agenda is presented. Hearing none, will someone please move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Forbes. Call the question on the matter. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Council, there are several sets of meetings that are included in this this package from December 11th, 2023, February 12th, 2024, March 18th, 2024, and April 29th, 2024. Just before I put those forward, just checking in with the clerk, does that mean that we just haven't had this format of a meeting for these to pop up, or why are we going back to 2023 with meeting minutes not being?
No, thank you for your worship. Unfortunately, it was a staff capacity. Workshop minutes are much more intensive to complete, and just with the capacity of my team, we haven't been able to bring them forward until this point in time, but we are now caught up, so we will not have the backlog that we've had before.
Thank you very much. Okay, they have been included in the package. Any errors or omissions from the meeting minutes as presented? None, will somebody please move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Moss, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, and those 4 sets of minutes are now adopted. Okay. Moving on to reports from council or staff, we have item 3.1. This is the 2025 transportation planning update, and see Mr. Fitzgerald here. Mr. Cohen, do you have any opening comments, or straight to Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yeah, so just as a quick intro to here, the first item we're talking about in the transportation workshop is transportation planning update, and really focusing on a couple of key areas. A couple of things that we want to be doing as part of our work plan for next year is developing a transportation action plan as well as a curbside management strategy. So Mac will go through in a bit more detail as to what they entail, but effectively, the transportation action plan is more of that midterm roadmap of how do we look at our OCP targets, how do we look at existing issues such as traffic congestion in and around Highway 1, and really building that roadmap for council as well as the community in terms of what comes next, as opposed to our budget cycle that we look at every single year for what those projects look like. So it's really looking at a more of a midterm roadmap for that. And the curbside management strategy is really looking at our limited curbside space, particularly in areas of high demand, and how can we as the district look at a more holistic view on what that looks like for using the curbside, particularly as we think about things like the OCP update that Mr. Milburn and his team are looking at over the course of the next 12 months, and doing a concurrent process with preparing for the demands that we're anticipating on our curbside. With that, I'll then hand over to Matt just to give another brief presentation for you.
Thanks, Peter. Your worship, we can change the meeting room, we can change the tech, but you still have to listen to me.
There you go.
Hang on.
I think we're gonna just have to move through the slides from the previous topics to get to where we want to be. Perfect. Okay, so first let's talk about our current transportation plan. It was developed to advance the district's OCP goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving public health, and developing more options for how people of all ages and abilities travel around our community. So the data on this slide reflects the starting point when the OCP transportation target of 35% sustainable mode share went into effect back in 2011. And the results here from 2011 and 2017 are taken from TransLink's trip diary. And the more recent data is from the North Shore Transportation Survey, which has been conducted every year since 2019. And really, when we look at this data demonstrates that the district has experienced a gradual shift to increase sustainable mode share, thanks in part to several key transit, walking, and cycling projects that have been completed since 2011. But in recent years, this improvement has been relatively flat. District staff can currently continue to receive feedback from the community that road users continue to experience severe traffic congestion at times, particularly in and around the Highway 1 corridor. To keep the district moving and advance our mode share objectives will require difficult decisions and trade-offs on how to prioritize the district's limited space within our existing right-of-way, which I think our session earlier in the evening demonstrated. So at a policy level, the district's transportation targets and strategies remain relevant now as they were during the last Transportation Master Plan update in 2012 and our most recent OCP action plan in 2021. However, to echo some of the comments from earlier this evening, the context is changing. Population is increasing. Provincial housing legislation changes require 20 years of residential growth to be accommodated. Quality of life is being impacted by congestion, and our town centers are becoming more developed. Looking ahead, more road users present challenges and opportunities in achieving our 35% mode share target. In response to these changes, a transportation action plan and curbside management strategy are proposed. So today, the district's transportation planning work is guided by the OCP and transportation plan, which sets out high-level, long-term visions and priority actions. The district's annual capital planning process, which serves as a shorter-term identification of specific projects. Upcoming transportation initiatives do support long-term goals. However, this can be better communicated to council and the community on how the various priorities work together in supporting the OCP and transportation plan vision. A transportation action plan is proposed to fill this gap, providing a more structured and cohesive midterm roadmap of improvements that staff are proposing across the district. So as the district identifies where new housing could be located, curb space reallocation may be required to improve the capacity and safety of the transportation network. The curbside management strategy will provide guidance on how to manage areas of elevated parking demand and potentially make decisions to prioritize competing curbside uses in different contexts. Examples of these competing demands may include on-street parking, transit infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure, loading zones, waste collection, placemaking, green infrastructure, and shared mobility services. Undertaking this work in 2025 will allow the district to align with ongoing provincially mandated work to update the OCP as well as the zoning bylaw by the end of 2025. And I'll now hand it back to the mayor for the recommendations on the floor.
Okay. All right, council, any additional questions at this time? To be clear, Mr. Cohen, obviously there's a lot of things that you're looking for direction in. We've just had the discussion out in the main room about the distinction between a workshop and a special meeting of council, a regular meeting of council. I fully support us petitioning council, getting ideas, helping get a better understanding of where council's at on different things in a workshop. But I do want to reserve formal decision-making on specific projects to regular meetings of council or to special meetings of council, as we discussed last time. But this still looks like fairly specific direction you're looking for. Perhaps could you make some comments about that?
Yeah, I can provide some comments. So in terms of the 4 reports this evening, we drafted them as staff as though it was potentially going to be a regular meeting. What you see before you, we're in a workshop format, so these are just indicative in terms of what we would typically be seeking consensus or guidance from council on. We recognise that on specific initiatives, specific projects, a regular council and a vote is typically how we would move forward from council direction. And so tonight in a workshop environment, it's more conversational, it's soliciting feedback from council that, you know, in terms of looking at the transportation action plan and looking at the curbside management strategy, is this generally what council is wanting us to be moving forward with in the months ahead? Is there any feedback for you to share with us? And we'll go away and start to develop that work plan. And then in future months and into next year, we'll obviously be doing regular updates with council and ultimately getting a council approval on the strategy once it's in a finalised form.
Okay, so just to be clear again, the motion that council will be considering is to receive the report. And in the process of getting to that receipt, we want feedback on all of these kinds of items so that staff can be better prepared when it actually comes forward for a decision.
That's correct, and this is just the first conversation on this.
Sorry, it's just that the way it's written, it makes it
Yes.
seem like it's driving to a decision tonight. This is a workshop. We're here to solicit your feedback.
Good clarification, you're
Thank
correct, yes.
Councillor Muir, your comments?
Well, so there's the, so I've got all of this. I've got all of these maps, from 2012. What are you asking me for? How we're going to communicate with the public? How you're going to solicit feedback? We did that with the previous item that we just discussed, and we saw that the solicitation of comment from the public was not enough because we saw the broader community come forward. So I'd like to understand more carefully the process to communicate, the process to present to the community, the process to allow council to take part in those presentations. Prior to COVID, we used to do a number of town halls on changing initiatives or developments or big plans that were going to affect the community. We would go from community to community and have, boards up and staff there to discuss, and council would be engaged. And I find more what we're doing now is we're doing surveys. And the surveys are challenging for the community. I've heard a lot of feedback, criticism of the surveys. And then I also feel as a councillor, I do not feel as comfortable as I once did in understanding the direction that we're going, because I find that we're being asked to make decisions in a very high level general way, and then things like what we just experienced in the chamber happen. We're not understanding. I know we're using reports to council as a way to communicate initiatives. Those reports we often miss. They're coming forward at maybe, at a time where, like, I know the Parkway one came forward at Christmas. And I know that the no right-hand turns on red were not included in the report. It's things like that. Ultimately, the decision-making stops here. And we are the ones that will be, will wear the concern from the community in regards to whether we're going in the right direction or not. So it's imperative that we're all very clear on how we move forward with these big plans. And I know, you want specifics. I do too. I want specifics, and I have shared this with Mr. Cohen, that I want to see what's coming, so I'm not surprised. I don't want the community to be surprised. I want them to understand that there's an opportunity for them to give input. I want them to be feel like they have a clarity about what's coming. I don't want it to be like, of course, we want to protect those most vulnerable in our community, such as those children walking to Eastview. But I didn't get any information on how many attended that workshop. I didn't see, what the input was after that workshop. I heard anecdotally from people that attended it that they felt like there was no support for removal of a lane, and yet the information that we got back suggested that there was. It wasn't attached to the report that we saw. So I just feel like I feel like we're not one team right now. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just mean that there's a better way to communicate so we're all on the same page.
Yes, please, Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, so Councillor Murphy, this is exactly the gap we're trying to fill, because we recognize that we have the OCP vision that has high-level statements and targets, and then we get to the annual budgeting process and we kind of try to hash through kind of the project by project line items. The gap that we're trying to fill, the end goal here is to create that midterm roadmap and telling what are the projects coming up, why are we doing them, how are we doing them, and when. And so the end goal product is to have this roadmap, the transportation action plan or the curbside management strategy, to have as a document. It's clear to council and the community of saying, here's what the next 5 to 10 years looks like, and here's how we think it might help achieve the OCP target, whatever other goal we're trying to identify as well. The second piece of this is, so the first piece is that's the end goal that we're trying to achieve in terms of, let's just call it a document, but there's a lot that goes into that process as well. So some of the feedback that we want to be receiving from council today is that in the next 6 to 12 months, as we go down the path of creating this transportation action plan, as we are creating a district-wide curbside management strategy, how do we want to be doing that? So you've identified in terms of councils feeling that maybe there's not enough touch points, there's not enough discussion that comes through as a report to councils. And so that's kind of the feedback that we're trying to solicit from council this evening in terms of as we go on this journey, and it's going to have a lot of interest from council in the community because it's talking about transportation and curbside management. How do you want us to have those regular touch points? What format, what style, just those types of pieces of feedback. So as we start to create our work plan for this work, we want to try and do it as quickly as possible. We want to make sure that we're not missing certain things through the process and at the end goal as well as part of what the document could end up looking like.
So just, got 4 members of council wanting to
Yeah, I'm
speak.
good. No,
Okay.
I'm gonna come back.
Yeah, perfect, that's awesome. So my question, we've obviously had a lot of, I think it was 2018 or 2019, we looked at the 5-year financial plan, and we said, we want to make active transportation a goal, and we set out to have 50% of the capital in the 5-year plan to be focused on the expansion of active transportation. And we obviously, 5 years have come and gone since then. And in fact, the active transportation numbers have gotten slightly worse than when we set out with that goal originally, to put 50% of capital into active transportation. And so my question is, what's going wrong? You know, that you know, we need to know that information before we can address section 2, which is, you know, prioritizing mode share issues. And so, do you have a response to that? I mean, we made it a priority, we put 50% of our capital towards it, and it got worse.
Yeah, I would say you can't put it down to one specific matter in terms of why is the dial, why aren't we moving on the dial? I can probably anecdotally say probably there's a number of reasons. There's one element in terms of, if you look at the active transportation file and you look at a map, it's an incomplete network. And so it's, and when we talk about this with council now and again, it's quite difficult for us to really see the benefits from a transportation planning perspective of how many people are getting out of their car into sustainable modes of travel when we still have this patchwork of a network. And that's really challenging here given the topography that we have as well as a limited road network. I'd also say that probably the Highway 1 congestion is a major component and an issue as it relates to traffic congestion and reliable things like transit. And it also creates a separation through our community. And also...
But it should, arguably, actually make people more likely to choose active transportation options. Congestion is so bad that if you live in Sealand, you're not able to make a local trip with your car. So shouldn't that be causing more of those trips to be taken by bike and pedestrian in those areas?
Ideally, yes. In time, the worse the traffic condition is, the more people just have to think about alternate modes as well. So yes, that would be something that we would think be seeing, but the data is not showing that dial moving.
Are we able to point to other municipalities that have made the kind of commitment we did, but ended up actually improving their statistics rather than the situation we're in where they've actually gone the wrong direction?
Good question. I don't have it at hand, but we can certainly provide that update.
Trying to figure out what's different about us. Why hasn't putting the resources there produced the result? But I've made my point. I've got councillors Ma, Hanson, and Bath. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Just to set the context for my question, I'm going to quote a couple bits from the report. Mode shift has remained relatively stagnant since 2017, and context is changing. Population has increased. Town centers are more developed. So that's the context for my question. And Mayor Mike asked, my first question is, you know, potential explanation for this stagnation. So I'll leave that for now. My second question is, percentage-wise, active transportation hovers around 20 to 22%, but the population has increased. Do we have a sense of absolute numbers of trips? Like, percentage-wise, it might not have increased, but are there more trips being made by active transportation modes? Do we know that?
I can take that question, Peter. So Councillor Ma, the survey that we're using is the North Shore Travel Survey, and it's based on a panel survey of a sample of residents on the North Shore. And so it's not based on asking every single person their travel habits, but if we see that the percentage is holding steady, and the number of trips, the number of people is increasing, we can infer that there has been more trips taken, but it is based on a sample.
Okay. And I know, we talked about complete network so people can get across the North Shore. Putting on my marketing hat, sometimes you try to, get your customers to buy more as opposed to finding new customers, right? So do we know where there's more active transportation activity? Like, is it more Deep Cove, Lynn Valley, or, Permanent Heights on the west side? Do we know geographically where there's more activity?
I can start, and if you have other things to add. So there are a few sources that staff use to try and assess where active transportation activity is occurring. In addition to a broad survey, we also have access to Strava Metro data, which provides information that's user reported, as well as we have an annual program to install cycling counters to assess sort of where we have existing transportation infrastructure, what are the changes that we're seeing in cycling mode share. Overall, though, we can't be everywhere at once. We don't have those counters everywhere. So there's a little bit of a skill of inference of looking at those different references and starting to understand the potential trips that people are making and the ways that they're getting there and how they're moving around.
So potentially, could we look at, wow, there's a lot of people from Upper Lynn that's, biking. Do we put more emphasis making sure that they have accessible routes as opposed to maybe the west side isn't a high percentage, and maybe, we put our resources, like they're a secondary market that we look at. I just don't know if we want to put priority in where we think there's more potential by geographic area.
I think that's an appropriate question as we're looking at something like a transportation action plan in terms of how we prioritize recycling investment. I don't know if anything to add here.
Just what I'll say is like some of the feedback I'm receiving from council, I'm putting down in terms of things that I'm hearing. So like we do usually, I'm going to report out again in terms of what I'm hearing from council in terms of it would be great to know the answer to this through this exercise. Why aren't we moving the dial geospatially where everything's happening? So I'm going to be taking that and do a summary at the end as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson?
Thank you very much. And thank you to staff for all your hard work on what I'm sure is a set of intractable problems. So I do notice that the loan share, we're trying to get to 35%, and that's proven to be a sticky wicket. It's really bounced around 20%, 21%. So that's one goal for sure, and it's supported by this council and by our community. And then on the other hand, we have this significant problem, of course, with congestion. I mean, I've said before that you go anywhere in Metro, introduce yourself as a district councillor, and you hear about traffic and not wanting to come to the North Shore because you get trapped over here, you can't get around it. It's having a myriad of negative impacts on our social economic fabric here in the district. The question that I would pose, you guys are traffic engineers, you're traffic experts, you're studying this matter carefully. You're proposing, as I understand, to come forward with a plan for sort of the medium term, as I hear it. Where do you think you can get some wins? Where do you think you can put forward some ideas that we can take to the community and say, here it is, we actually have better active transportation on the one hand, or some kind of congestion abatement on the other, and within a budget that is realistic for us at the moment?
Yeah, I can take it. Obviously, we'll do more work through this exercise.
Where is the low-lying fruit?
Yeah, exactly. So I think in terms from a couple of pieces there, as it relates to congestion, whether there's some localized improvements, some turning bays, some signal coordination, that type of stuff at the local level, that's within our control. That's something that we can look at in a micro level for congestion. Highway 1 is a big challenge. It involves senior levels of government, so that makes it less in our control. But I think locally, we can certainly start to explore what that looks like. I also think, really, how do we unstick where we are with our mode shift? I think transit plays a critical role in that. We're obviously working really closely with TransLink on the Bright Inlet rapid transit, whether it's bus rapid transit earlier on and later on with potentially rail-based. That, I believe, is really critical to start seeing that dial move. And with transit, we talk about sustainable mode share. If you have a better network for transit, you generally can see a better network or uptick on active transportation. And so we're thinking, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket for mode shift. Unfortunately, I think transit's going to be a really key ingredient for us to start getting close to that 35% of mode share. And we'll obviously have more updates in the new year once we continue working with TransLink on their Bright Inlet rapid transit exercise.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Just by way of a follow-up as well, I mean, I made the comment in the debate that we had in the special council meeting about the Spirit Trail and how I supported the Spirit Trail, but I wasn't going to bind my hands with respect to the cost of the Spirit Trail and taking money potentially away from other competing infrastructure initiatives that could, on analysis, offer more benefit. So I guess what would be really useful to us would be to see your suggestions with respect to meaningful initiatives that could have real benefit around active transportation, around traffic congestion, and then get some sense of the costing so that as we're spending money on these initiatives, we're confident that we're spending them where we're going to get the greatest result. Apropos Councillor Maw's comment, I mean, where could we perhaps magnify our successes with an investment that might be less than another investment that might in fact be more expensive and not have the same impact because it isn't meeting the need in the same way. So those would be my comments. I'm going to thank you so much for what you're doing. I admire your brain power and your dedication to the task. I'm going to be studying that report very, very carefully with the question, how can any of this make a difference? And are we spending our money in the right place?
Can I just clarify something on the materials on table? So the ones that are flagged as 2012, are those the exact same as the other one that's not flagged 2012, except for the last 2 pages?
Yeah, so Council, we had a request to be providing some materials from 2012, and so if you've got a duplicate package, the only difference will be the last 2 pages, just with a couple of additional pieces and new maps since 2012 that was discussed with Council.
Okay, so everything in front of the 2016 bicycle master plan is the same in both packages?
Thank you.
Next time, just give us the 2 pages that are different.
There you go. Okay.
So page 75 and 83 are different.
No. After 83 comes the bicycle master plan network 2016, and after that comes status of council priorities as of 2024. It's 2 pages at the back that are not a part of the 2012.
Right. Okay, so you have added those 2 additional pages. I'm not sure why we need this.
You can discard the other one.
So the one that has the 2012 flag at the top of it, it's already included in the other packages.
Right, okay.
Councillor Back, I think you were next.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on some of the recent active transportation projects that we've seen actually being constructed. And I think it's really been great to see some progress, some visible progress, and whether it's Mount Seymour Parkway or Lynn Valley Road or some of the other ones. Like, I feel like we are finally starting to make some progress here in the district, but it's because these routes have not been connected. It hasn't been a continuous network that we're not seeing the mode share, in my opinion. I think when people start to realize that they can get up and do their daily errands, they can commute to work, whatever the case may be, and they can do it, safely in a connected route, then we are going to start to see that mode shift start to happen. I think that's only logical. As well, I think obviously electric bikes play a big role in this, and as we see more adoption of that, that's going to increase mode share as well among different demographics. So, and also just the fact that we're using some of the kind of quick construction materials, I think has been a good change for the district. I think that's allowed us to do a lot of stuff, a lot of projects in a quicker fashion, in a way that's much more cost effective as well. So I like that approach, just because it has sped up some of these projects and allowed us to get some improvement for people that are rolling on these routes. So I don't think we should give up on mode share. I think I think as we start to see these routes start to connect, with what the city is doing as well, we will see people start to make different options to get around the community.
Good. Councilor Muir, you had an additional comment?
Well, I'm looking at the one that doesn't have the number, like the bicycle master plan 2016 page. And like the on-street bike route. So if I look at Dollarton and then Deep Cove, so what are we doing with this bicycle master plan network? Are we updating this one, or this is the one we're gonna work from? Maybe that's the question about all these sheets. Like, what's the future of all these sheets? Or because most of them are from 2012, except for the 2016, and then the council priority routes, or as of 2024. So that's, I guess, the Spirit Trail. This one's a little bit confusing compared to this one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just start with the blue one instead of the multicolored one. It might be simpler, but like I look at the blue one and we talk about Deep Cove Road.
What page?
It's not a page, it's the one with the blue lines.
Second to
Yeah, the
last.
second to last one. So on-street bicycling, master plan network. So that would suggest to me that, especially on the Deep Cove Road part, that you're gonna be removing parking in order to accommodate a cycling lane.
So in terms of what you see for the that was at that point in time in 2016. I think one of the key pieces of us going this action plan exercise in dialogue with council in the months ahead is that we have the 2012 transportation plan, we have the 2016 bicycle master plan network, we have the council priority routes from 2021, and a lot has happened over the last decade. And so for us, in thinking about the next 5 to 10 years, how do we stretch our dollar as best as we can in the right places is going to form part of that roadmap discussion. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into where could we connect certain locations, but I think council around the table, you probably have a really good idea of where is the best place for us to be investing it and getting your guidance over the next 5+ years to really be identifying where are the key spots for us to be focusing on this active transportation in stitching together that network as best as we can in a cost-effective manner.
So that doesn't, so let's just go back to the question
back
that I
to
asked.
it. I'll go back
So
to the
on the blue line map, on the bicycling master plan network, is that blue line down Deep Cove Road suggesting you'll be moving, just so I can understand the rest of it?
Correct.
Does that mean that you're gonna remove parking on that road in order to accommodate a shared space?
At the point in time in 2016 when it was contemplated, that would have been what was identified for Deep Cove Road, just what you've shared. We were looking at a great street and looking at it for all modes. That being said, we're doing a lot of work right now in Seymour as part of the Spirit Trail work. And so what we do with Spirit Trail and connecting to Deep Cove, that may make some of these connections a little bit more redundant because a lot of work's been done since 2016.
But this plan is still in place, and does it give you direction to go out and implement these things because it is in this bicycle master plan from 2016?
What this shows is just a desirable future in terms of what the network could look like. Council has at their discretion the ability to modify and change the bike network plan as you see fit.
And so is that what we're going to be doing as part of this process, changing it? Because I will say I'm feeling like there's another surprise coming for me, and the parking on Deep Cove Road is going to be removed to accommodate a bike lane that was envisioned in 2016. And I guess the part that I think we miss is what decisions did council make all those years ago in 2016 and prior to that and past that, that impacts how these plans are implemented? So for instance, 29th is a good example, that we took out parking on one side of 29th to accommodate a bike lane, but we did impact residents, businesses, suites. Do we understand on Deep Cove Road, there are some properties that have zero parking. They don't have a driveway, they don't have a parking spot, because they were cottages built in the 1930s that still are lived in. On the other side of Deep Cove Road, there's a retaining wall. And you can't push back the boulevard any further because the road was a country lane. So this is the part I need to understand. And I think that's where council can be of great service to staff, to go section by section, to help you understand what we know about the community. And you help us understand how we can achieve some things, maybe not all of it, maybe a third of it, with a variety of ways to move around.
Yeah, Mr. Cohen.
So just to kind of really clarify as well, is you've got the 2016 bicycle master plan. If you flip to the next page, that was a session before my time in 2021 where staff were trying to grapple with that issue in terms of the 2016 master plan. The council, where do you want us to prioritize our time? And so what you see on the next page is from 2021, council identified some priority routes and really focusing, how do we best connect our town and village centres? And so that's really what's guiding our work right now. It's not the 2016 master plan, because there's a lot on that plan. It's really the council priority routes that really are focusing ourselves. In talking about Deep Cove Road specifically, that is not on our plan right now in terms of moving forward with anything along Deep Cove Road. We want to see the outcomes of the Spirit Trail component first through that dialogue with council.
And just one, I'll just say one more thing and then I'll pass to someone else. I really think we have to understand the shift on the mode, especially cycling, because we talk about alternative transportation, but even in that chamber earlier, we talked about a cycling lane and not about why we weren't prioritizing improvements to a sidewalk, which was what really, like little kids were riding on the sidewalk to go to school. They weren't riding, they were riding on the sidewalk. I wouldn't let my kid ride on the road either, right? An alternative route. But where were the improvements coming on the sidewalk, the walkability? It seems like that wasn't even really mentioned. It was more about, let's create a buffer, let's put a cycling lane in. I think this map is a bit hard to read because you don't really understand the nuances of riding through that community. And I think we really need to recognize that, I think the majority of people that ride are riding in nice weather, in the summers, certainly in the Seymour, they're riding on the weekends. This is where you see hundreds of people riding. They ride on the weekends. They come early in the morning, 6 a.m. they ride. Certainly there was an uptick with the infrastructure on Mount Seymour Parkway. I just don't know if our weather and our geography is making it conducive to people using that network constantly to move enough people out of their cars to make a real difference. And I think we really have to have a good heart-to-heart about that, because I think it drives everything, and we don't want to admit that, we live on a mountain where it rains a lot of the year, and people live very different lives where maybe two parents are working and going in opposite directions and have to drive over a bridge. I do think, because we're trying to get to a place I don't know where we're going to get to.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say that, for me, the area that's of the highest priority for me is our town centers, making sure that our town centers are bikeable. I think you have the highest chance of actually diverting a car trip to a cycling trip or pedestrian trip in the town centers. Obviously, hope springs eternal that if you improve the cycling network out in Deep Cove, that you're going to get more trips. My problem is I make the distinction in my own mind, and I know we don't always present it this way, between recreational trips and commuting trips, and or local service trips, so like somebody just going to the grocery store or whatever. And I think you have a much higher chance of getting those non-recreational trips in the town centers, actually taking someone out of traffic. And so if you're looking for priorities in the active transportation plan going forward, that's where I would say my priorities are. The green spine development, the routes that tie into the new bridge that we produced as part of the Spirit Trail, routes that get us around highway blockages in an efficient way, you know, like what LoTET can be, Casano LoTET. You know, where's our Casano LoTET? Like what is connecting up? I mean, you know, we got the tunnel between Pemberton Heights and the area north of the highway there, but what other ways can we improve the infrastructure around a big blockage like that or close to a town center? I think those are the ones that are most likely to actually divert car riders and drivers into cycling. The number of people that are going to become daily commuters from 4 or 5 kilometers away from those town centers, it's going to be a much lower rate than if you make that infrastructure efficient in and around those town centers. So that would be the priority I would put.
Can I clarify something?
Yeah, Councilor Mo.
Are you talking about between town centers or within town centers?
I'm talking about within.
Yeah,
Within.
just to get around.
Yeah,
Quick little trip.
yeah, within town centers first, between town centers second. Well, I think getting around highway obstacles is obviously something that we know is a problem. People feel unsafe in those areas. But it can't all be on road reallocation. Some of it is going to have to be like Casano LaTette, where you actually make a dedicated separated route and apply for partnership with the provincial and federal government to produce it. But anyway, no, that would be my general comments. Councillor, oh, yeah.
Thank you. Pardon me. Well, I've been pretty excited about the work that you're doing and the way that the district has been in the last few years taking a stronger, more proactive approach to setting things up for active transportation routes. To me, the crux of the problem why there isn't more uptake is because it's not interconnected. And there's so many little gaps. And I'm going to use myself as a prime example. Having been an e-bike purchaser this spring, I was on it all the time until I got really scared going 1 block from my house, which is very close to Westview and Queens, over to the Delbrook Community Center. And you'd think that we would make that a priority, like to have a zone around community centers so that there's bike lanes coming and going for all ages of people and other modal shifts. And I just stopped doing that because I, just about got killed a couple of times, and you're just like, you turn into Queens and just all of a sudden you're in traffic. And it's because there's a whole lane of parked cars right beside the tennis courts on the corner of Queens and Delbrook. And so people aren't parking there because they're not even parking there because their houses are there. They're just using it as, a parking lot, basically, when it could be prioritized for a bike lane. And I think that it's that kind of example that would get me on my bike more often. And it's also to go over and do my shopping in Edgemont Village and stuff. Like, I would love, my dream was to go into Edgemont and do my shopping. And yet I'm hindered constantly by this problem of not feeling safe. And that to me is the bottom line with it. Like, people like me, average people, senior citizens like me, need to have safety in place before we start using it. And it's got to be interconnected. So those are my, obviously transit plays a critical role. And I think we have to continue the push for getting more, well, obviously the bus rapid transit to make that happen. And also just more east-west connectors, I think we've long talked about on the North Shore. And I don't understand why we're, you know, not further along with getting some action out of transit on that front.
Councillor Weary, then Councillor Back, Councillor Weary.
Well, I was just gonna say, and Queens is an excellent example between Delbrook and Edgemont. All those cars parked along Queens, they're employees from Delbrook. Because
Yeah,
we
maybe.
didn't build enough parking in the Delbrook Rec Center, because the concept was, well, it's near the community. People will walk, they'll ride their bike, they'll take the bus. And guess what? They didn't. We have an artificial turf field there. We've got a skateboard bowl and we've got a rec center. And all those cars parked from, what's that road right at the intersection of the entrance to Delbrook, the one across, Del Rio, thank you, Jordan. Del Rio and Delbrook is all staff parking. Because of the
How do you know that?
because I sit on the rec commission, I have for years, and I go there, and half the time for my meetings, I've had to actually park up on the road as well. And the concept of removing that row of parking was a huge concern from the rec commission because of the number of employees that park there. And I was actually, it was requested, and I did share this with staff, that there be a crosswalk put between Del Rio at the other end, at the very beginning of the rec center. There's a little road there that they park on. I think Del Rio goes in like a horseshoe, right? And there was a request from the rec commission to actually have a little crosswalk there because that's where staff enter the building, which is closer to where you live. So, you know, we make these decisions and then there's an impact. And then we start removing things and then there's another impact. So for every action, there's a reaction. And this is why, you know, everything is connected. That, you know, everything is already connected right now, but it's removing or adding things and not understanding how everything's connected that gets me really concerned. I mean, if you ride through, you don't see bikes riding on Broadway. They ride on the streets a couple of blocks off Broadway, on the side streets in Vancouver. Like, where
Because
is,
they have bike lanes in those side streets.
but where is the option for us to maybe look at some more of that, right? Connections, where it's off these major arterial roads, right? And then we have to address the parking. We've made some changes down in the Maplewood. We've reduced the level of parking in a rental building because we wanted to get rentals, so we've taken out parking. Maplewood is one big, huge parking lot right now. And it's only gonna get worse because we've just added hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of apartment units, and there's no place to park. You know, even if you go into Lower Lonsdale, I remember when the buildings were being put in the shipyards, there were ads in the buildings to say, I need a parking spot, I don't have one. Like, they were huge. It's like New York parking spots, probably not as expensive. In Lower Lonsdale, the first thing they did when they redeveloped Lower Lonsdale, and you can ask Richard White about this, is they put in a grocery store on Esplanade. They put the IGA in. It was the first big development that they put in on that street because when they built the density up, they didn't want people to get in their car and have to drive up to 14th or 15th or what was it, 13th to go to the Safeway, right? So they put a grocery store in. Part of this is when we redevelop into the town centers, you need to also make sure that the services are there and not just hope that they will come. Because sometimes they don't come. You need to actually focus directly on the type of services that people need, which is a grocery store. And then allow that there's going to be a need for flexibility and allow that it might not work out the way you want, you know? It's a bit of a cat and mouse, I think.
Councillor Back.
Could staff, thank you, could staff comment on how our coordination is with the city of North Vancouver and their bike network? I know sometimes we've tried to coordinate on different projects and there's been a delay on the city side, and maybe that's happened vice versa as well. I'm just wondering where that relationship is at and how we plan our cycling networks together. It's kind of a general comment, but.
Yeah, so there's a fair amount of coordination between staff on the different files. I have regular communication as projects are moving forward through the process so that we can get updates. So for example, Mobot at the City of North Vancouver requested regular updates from them on the Casano Latet project. So we are thinking about those things because obviously the investments in the city size open up new connections for us on our side, like decision to invest in infrastructure that reaches that bridge. It's pretty important that it's completed. So we are regularly communicating. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Peter?
Yeah, I think the other thing to add to Mac is also on our larger scale initiatives, an example would be Spirit Trail. It's more regional to a degree because just at the pure length of what it's talking about. Obviously, it certainly serves a local neighborhood need, but through North Shore Connects, we provide regular updates as well through that in terms of some of the ongoing larger scale initiatives as well.
And so in creating a transportation action plan, are we going to be coordinating some of our actions to make sure that they align with the city where it makes sense?
Yeah. That would certainly form part of the engagement strategy.
Yeah, because I think that is a frustrating piece sometimes when we invest in a section of the network and then it doesn't carry on, right? Whether it's Casano Latet or whatever else. But, yeah, for the time being.
It would be great if we could see the flow of the Casano Lutet once it's put in. What's that gonna do to that movement? You know, how is it gonna change how people get where they want to go in a different way? Like, you know, it would be interesting to see how both of our municipal plans and show that visually.
I'm going to check back in with you, Peter. Looking to you for some prompts. Where are you missing feedback from the council that you really are looking for feedback this evening?
I think I'm getting a number of themes that's going to help us start the process in terms of us pulling together a work plan and coming back to council in the new year to saying, here's kind of how we're planning to attack it, and then actually start having some more robust discussions on specific themes. In terms of what I'm hearing, just as kind of an interim, here's kind of some key themes, you know, from what I've heard around the table. Queries about like, why aren't we moving the dial on sustainable transportation modes? Geospatially, is there something there in terms of a higher or lower use of sustainable transportation modes? How are we balancing our 35% mode shift with traffic congestion issues today? So that's a key thing that's popped up. Kind of like a value on return of investments on our transportation projects, things like quick wins, pinch points within and outside town centres, around key facilities, anything smaller scale that can kind of get things going. Commentary as it relates to maybe incremental, easy to implement, as well as network mapping. We've got maps, but there's a lot of them. So can we kind of just package it together in terms of that piece? Safety, and then coordinating with our neighbouring jurisdictions. I think for me, in terms of some of the key areas and interests that council has to consider as part of the transportation action plan, I think we're getting a really good picture so that in the new year, when we start to come back and have more discussions, we can really focus in on some of those comments. Process, I've kind of got some feedback so far, probably not so much on the process piece in terms of how frequently do you want us to be coming back to council to talk on certain items, but I have heard that it's important to develop a roadmap where council isn't surprised by some of the projects that we're doing. It's clear, it's involving council, as well as kind of what's the public dialogue and strategy for that piece as well. So I think I'm getting a good picture of the dots, and then we can certainly take that away and start to connect it all in the new year, start to really have some focused discussions with council in a workshop environment, not in a regular. But that's kind of from me in terms of what I'm taking away so far from the discussion.
Not
Sorry.
totally shifted in a totally different direction, but I was searching online for a number of cities' pages about active transportation and trying to find areas where they actually have mapped and charted growth. And one of the things that came up was e-mobility and scooters. What intentional steps could we take to make people aware of that as an option in the community? Like, are they allowed in a bike lane? Are they up to what size are they allowed in a bike lane? Are they allowed on a sidewalk? Are they allowed in an off-road trail? What communications piece could we do out there ahead of the Christmas buying season to tell people what's safe and acceptable? And because you are seeing in other cities, it's a big part of their transportation planning. And yet, you know, we haven't gone in that direction. I don't see a lot of other BC examples going in that direction.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something we can look at in terms of communicating out and engaging with the public in terms of saying like, hey, here's the options that you have in terms of that last mile micro-mobility, as it's what we refer to it as. And we are doing some work in that space in micro-mobility and certainly can weave that in. Because we work very closely with the city as well as the District of West Vancouver and others on the micro-mobility file. So that's certainly something we can take away.
Just that our written word, our de juris on it was a little behind. We have a lot of people on those powered wheels, we have people on scooters, but it's actually unclear what's actually legally allowed. I think what's legally allowed is actually quite limited compared to what we actually have out on those spaces.
I'm not directly answering your question, but something I wanted to build on from Peter's response as well, is that through our contract and through the work we do with Lime and with BCAA on the two programs we have, so the e-cargo bike program and the Lime e-bike share program, we actually require them and invite them to participate in key events that the district is hosting. So we bring them out so that there's more awareness in the community, but I think it's a good point as well in terms of what we're putting out online.
Yeah, and I would include privately owned
Yes, exactly,
scooters
yeah.
and mobility devices. Okay, I've got Councilors Mom, Yuri, and Pope. Councilor.
Peter, I was just wondering, does the plan envision strategy work with Modi? Like, what I'm thinking about is when there's a big issue about the road alignment for the bridgehead.
Yep.
My impression is that that's not resolved. They said they're gonna come back, right?
That's
So
correct.
how does our plan deal with something like that? Is it gonna touch on that, or?
Yeah, it will absolutely talk to senior levels of government. Our role as local municipality is more in advocacy. We do that day to day, but that's certainly going to weave into the transportation action plan outcomes without presupposing what it's going to say. It's critical that in terms of Highway 1, dealing with the bridge, dealing with transit and
Yeah.
transit's a key part of that. It's ingrained in the whole transportation discussion. So there will certainly be discussion in the action plan talking about how do we advocate for that more strongly. We continue to do that, but that'll form part of the discussion as we
I think of that, and I also think about Councillor Hanson's motion about that extra lane. Like, I just don't want that to be lost. Like, whether we go ahead with it or not, I think we need to work on that.
We agree. Yeah.
Councilor Yuri.
Well, the community will have something to say if that lane is removed from Seymour. They were very loud and clear. And I think it would be prudent for us to invite the elected MLAs and have a discussion about how, what the impacts are. Maybe we host a town hall and invite them and talk to the community, because it's a very significant impact to the lane. That lane is regularly filled with a dozen to 20 cars all the time. And I'll tell you what will happen is they will use the bus lane. That's exactly, there's no qualms in my mind. The bus lane will be used. So I just on the process, I think it's really important to sort of go section by section on those connections, those quick wins, those town centers, and really engage council, but the community. Like I hear about, we're talking to council and what we're gonna bring back to council, but the community needs to be engaged. I think they feel like they're finding out about this stuff sort of at the 11th hour, and it's frustrating to them. So we need to figure out a better process than surveys and hoping people are gonna see things on the district's Facebook page. They're not. We post stuff on our Facebook page, and that's why they respond the way they do. But also I think there's a really important part of this that we get back into the community, into the schools and the rec centers, and have those town halls and engage with people on things and talk to them. And then we have a better idea as to where that support's gonna be. Because I have to say, I don't think what we've been doing has been working very well. I also can't help but notice that we're always talking about cycling lanes and very little about pedestrian. We more tend to focus or lean towards bike commuter traffic or recreational traffic, as the mayor pointed out, but very little about the connections that you need for walking. Many of the sidewalks that are put in place are used by other forms of transportation because bikes can ride on They do, they're not supposed, I don't think they're supposed to ride on sidewalks, but they do. And then some ride on the road, and some are in traffic. So there needs to be some, maybe a look at that. And part of these connections. I guess I would say the other thing too, and I think I mentioned this already, but we just have to be really cognizant of it within these town centers of providing the services that actually people need, so they can make those little quick wins. If you look at the Marine Drive corridor, more of that retail space is taken up by banks and chiropractors, and they all need those things, but you can't buy bananas at a chiropractor. And so people are having to drive if it's rainy, or ride further than if they were just to be in that town center. So I think that is also contributing to this as well.
I think the only thing just to kind of add to Councillor Murray, your comments, and they're certainly valid comments, is that this is intentionally being a handful of months behind the OCP work, because as that work starts to look at what does the vision look like for the community, we're close behind it talking about transportation, curbside management as well. So that's just kind of another piece to talk about. Land use and transportation are really interlinked.
And then you need to look at the land use that First Nations are going to be planning. That's quite significant, in much more significant than what we're looking at as far as density, potential density, because I don't think their plans are really cemented yet. I think they're talking about them, but there's nothing that maybe the community is aware of as far as those kinds of densities and how that's going to impact things. And at least 20 years away from a new bridge.
Just before we move on from Councillor Murray, you raised the issue of advocacy and communication with the MLAs. We've obviously had this Main and Mountain issue pop up. The Deputy Minister said, we've heard you, we're going to back away, but we want to come back and talk to you in the spring. What does our advocacy look like between here and there, so that we don't just, again, they just throw the same unacceptable option on the table at the same time?
Yeah, well, it's only been the last few days that ministry staff have actually been able to start communicating with partners again. So we want to start re-engaging that before the holidays, just to at least get that back on the radar. It's been a couple of months now, and we really want to get that resolved.
Who is Transportation Minister now?
Oh,
It's on that sheet.
well, infrastructure's Bowen.
Bowen.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
We're gonna look it up. But
That's
just,
important to know, right?
It's all changed.
just on that, we did, when they were doing the Mountain Highway interchange and the Main Street, Modi was in here,
It is far north.
it was,
Oh, right.
No S, no S.
Farnworth. Modi was in here showing council the changes that were coming. A couple of them, the mayor and I almost had a stroke, and we stopped it and said, no, you're not gonna shut down that on-ramp, or you're not gonna shut down that lane onto Main Street, and they didn't. And so they really did have a dialogue with us throughout that project. And they haven't been in this chamber for a long, long time. So let's invite them in. Let's invite Modi in, and and they can present to us what their thoughts are, and we can have some comments directly to them. It is not unprecedented that they have come into this chamber. We played a significant role in what would happen or what wouldn't happen in regards to those original concepts on Mountain Highway and Main Street. And a couple of them were, like shutting down the on-ramp from the Dollarton onto Highway 1 in the Cloverleaf, the circle. They wanted to shut that down. They wanted to shut down the lane off of Mountain Highway heading south, or off of Highway 1 heading south down to Main Street. They wanted to close that too. And we said no go on both of those. And they respected us and understood that our impact. So I'd like to invite them into this chamber so we can talk to them.
May I suggest an earlier in the day meeting so they get the full experience leaving the North Shore?
Yes.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. A couple of points on the process. You were asking about the process and reporting back and all of that. And I just want to say, first of all, I totally support having this type of a plan in place. It makes sense to me that it would be over the next 5 years, and what should we be looking at, and what should we be prioritizing and closing those gaps. That all makes a lot of sense. One, I don't think you need to be coming before council every time we apply for a grant. Like, that should just do it. Like, we're gonna, we're gonna be wanting the
The problem
money.
is some of the
anyway.
grants do require a motion.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
really.
is there a fast way of
We
doing that?
love to fast track that, but
Yeah.
they require a motion from council.
Does it have to be going through all these formal processes and, I mean, really, it's sort of ridiculous. Anyway, and can we look at other ways to generate input from the community? I heard Councillor Muri talk about more town halls and engaging that way, but the thing is, let's face it, young people don't go to town halls and they want more online engagement. And certainly anybody working and commuting these days can't make it to town halls, can't make it to city council. So I feel like we need to be reaching people more on that level, and I feel very happy about the overwhelming response to our surveys. Now, people may not like some of the wording of the surveys, and I've heard that too, and I'm not thrilled with some of the wording and some of it and the way the questions were designed and that sort of thing. But the response is really significant, the amount of people that responded to our surveys, especially if you compare it to, say, Metro Vancouver. When they try and do surveys and get people to respond, it's like 10 times the amount. So I think we are reaching people in that way, and I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good way to continue. Yeah, those are my comments at the moment.
That's of course.
What we're all talking about here is the linkage to what we're trying to communicate. Staff's trying to communicate to us and what we're trying to communicate to the public. So I wonder along those lines, if we could have a workshop maybe with communications about what's the process, how we do these, because sometimes it seems feast or famine. There's no surveys out there, then there's 5 out there. The timing is usually bad for reasons that staff maybe don't really, you're locked into your workload and you've got to get things done. So the timing as well. And the other thing is, I mean, a lot of people are upset at the surveys thinking that the questions are going for a slanted answer. So I think however we're coming up with those questions, we need to look at that and come up differently. Because a lot of people have also told me, I give up answering surveys. You guys have already decided before the survey even comes out. And I can tell that by the survey. So those kind of comments. So maybe we could have a workshop with communications once we figure out all these plans about how we can actually, when we start getting things done and moving it forward, how best to communicate it.
Yeah, good idea, really good idea.
See no further speakers. I see no further prompts from staff. We still have some time, so I'll just double check with the members of the public present. Is there something that we didn't address that you'd love to raise?
Are you going to, is the curbside management strategy wrapped with this? Yes. Like you're basically covering all of it?
Well, we're doing that.
Yes and no. We're not actually drawing to these recommendations to the conclusion.
I guess what I'm asking is curbside management part of the transportation?
You can talk about curbside management right now if you,
No, it's not that. I have.
okay, please.
Okay, I went through your report and, I won't stand up and speak if you don't mind. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so, in your analysis, you talk about mode share stagnation. And it says that it hasn't really moved since 2017. Exactly, it hasn't moved since the 2011 data. I don't know what happened before the 2011 data, but that's basic. So to whoever it was, whichever councillor it was, that said, it's not working. What's going wrong? I absolutely say that. So, one of my questions is, has there been analysis to confirm that appreciable transition to walking and cycling is even realistic in this world? Given the topography and aging demographic, I'm not getting on an electric bike to do any commuting anytime soon. I'm 72 years old. My husband won't let me. He's too afraid I'm going to 66. Yeah, no, but anyway, it's not going to happen anytime So, and besides, I'm taking a dog. So, and then considering cost and congestion impacts, wouldn't it be better to focus more efforts and budget on improving public transit infrastructure? And in that, I know you have trouble working with transit. I worked with transit for 35 years. I totally understand that problem. But if we could, like you, when you were talking about transit, you were talking about the major hub stuff. If you could get transit working, like for me to get from Deep Cove to Mill Valley takes that to Lonsdale takes an hour and a half by bus. We did try doing one car for a little while when my daughter was 5. To get from Deep Cove to Seymour Dance was an hour and a half, for a half hour less. So those kinds of connections, if we can improve just the connectivity between the various places, like in transportation planning, you always talk about origin and destination. Start doing some of those studies and understanding where people are starting and where they want to get to. And with your beautiful multi-use path networks, use transit to get people from the beginning of one to another one. You know, you can use them because transit nowadays accommodates bikes very well. So we can do the active transportation, the cycling and walking active transportation combined with the transit stuff. That would encourage me to get out of my car. So I'm hoping you can do that. Anyway, one of the other things I want to point out is the climate ignorant active, whatever it is one of the reasons for promoting model share transition away from cars. There was a statement that cars are responsible for 96% of PNV transportation emissions. But with proliferation of EVs and hybrids, people feel better about having a car. So I don't think we're going anytime soon away from cars. I think there will be as many cars on the road always because people feel guilty about it. And we're not poor neighborhood.
And justified by the hour and a half transit time to
Yes, exactly.
half-hour meeting.
So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to add to the meeting?
Yeah, if I could say a few things. First of all, I think I want to discuss an example of what I think you have done well. Okay, so this is Delaware. First of all, I think you had the traffic data to justify the plans that you were putting into action. So the data was there. Nobody could say, well, there's no speeding on Delaware. Okay, the data was there. Secondly, you had the backing of the people that were most affected by speeders on Delaware. And those were the people living on Delaware, not the people whizzing down at 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. And that was the petition. So we had 94% of people saying, hey, we need a safer road than what we have. You also had a community meeting, and Pam, you were part of it, and it was a really effective meeting. There were 60 local people, and we all talked about what we could do, how we could make our roads safer. Not only that, but you had a waiting list of people that couldn't make it, and you had information from them too. So nobody could say, well, the community was not consulted. And I've heard that a few times tonight. Then what happened is it went to engineering. Okay, so we had community input, it went to engineering, and they came up with a plan. I hope some of you have driven it, because basically, to me, it's very effective. It's very effective. First of all, as far as I can see, numbers of people speeding, at least on the top part, are much lower. Also, I think it was completed at a reasonable cost. So there's no masses of cement or anything like that. It's basically paint and poles. I think it's engineering. I think it's been effective. Delbert was stated as to be a pilot project. I would like to suggest that we have the middle and the bottom half of Delbert that has not been affected in any way by the work at the top. So we still have speeding way down at the bottom. I would hope that sometime this year we would have a similar process or a similar project which is cheap, effective lines and everything else. Again, I would like to thank District for doing it. I think you did a really good job, and I think engineering did a good job at the top of Dover. So thank you.
Anyone else like to comment in the meeting?
Don't usually comment on these things, but I'll make a couple of points about active transportation. You'll never get me on a bike in this city. Never. Not going to happen. I went to school a few years ago with a woman who was paying for going to school with a settlement from having been hit by a bus and while riding a bike. Not doing that. It's insane and it's suicidal to get on a bike in this town anywhere. I'm sorry, I won't do it. Okay, and yeah, maybe on the bike paths and on, on the Spirit Trail where it's developed, but that isn't anywhere near where I live in Blue Ridge. I got to deal with Seashell and Berkeley long before I'm anywhere near a bike path that's going to be remotely safe. And you aren't talking about doing anything on those roads. So I'd really like to see a lot more investment in the bus infrastructure. I try to take the bus out of Blue Ridge as often as I possibly can, because I know what the traffic is like when I get over the freeway. So if we can't get TransLink to up the bus infrastructure, I don't know a way out of this. Because I think too many people think like me, I'm not gonna ride a bike. They may do it for other reasons. It's too far, it's raining, as Councilor Murray says, whatever, it's too steep. But it's not gonna happen. And I think you gotta find another way, another kind of transportation, and where you have suburban areas like Blue Ridge where I live, it's cars or buses. I don't see another option.
Very much. Okay.
Could we just ask staff to updates, like Edgemont? What's going on with Edgemont? We did bring a council motion forward twice.
Yep.
What's going on?
Yeah, so council asked staff to go away and talk to local businesses. So we're in the process right now. We've sent them some information in terms of saying like, hey, here's what staff think might be a proposal, and soliciting feedback from businesses. I think December 6th, we're soliciting that feedback by. That'll help inform what we do at Edgemont and Highland moving forward.
Well, at Edgemont and Highland, and then right in the, like, fully in the village.
So what we've done
Not just
is-
at the intersection of Edgemont and Highland.
So we've asked businesses two questions. One, Edgemont and Highland, signals aren't on the table right now. What else should we look at that location? And then
Village.
elsewhere in the village, what else do you want to let us know?
How to slow people down. Okay. And then just I know we've done some work on the lines in the DNV section of the road. But where are we with Modi? They're still non-existent. The interchange has no lines. There's no lines coming off the second narrows heading to Dollarton. Once you get to Riverside, they're gone. There's absolutely no markings on the road. So have we called Modi, or do we have a timeline when they're gonna?
I don't have a timeline. Have we reached out to Modi? Yes. We will do that again now that they're back in session. Staff are now able to talk further with us. There's a list of things we want to be having a conversation with Modi about.
We talk about safety, and when you can't see where you're going, especially in this weather at night, it's very challenging. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on, on the active transportation, bus infrastructure. Bus infrastructure is really important to me. I like riding my bike a lot everywhere, but I think buses move a lot of people. I heard a lot of talk about things we won't do. And I can't but help come back to the discussion. We had a well-researched proposal from staff that included a lot of engagement. And what a whole community of kids that are unsafe, and yet one uphill lane that doesn't impact traffic flow. What will you do? Will you remove a lane? Or like that was such a give me. I was like, what will it take?
If that's not it, what will it be, guys? If safety is paramount.
There's a lot of lip service to safety, but like there's tough decisions, and lots of the community's upset that it's terrible traffic on that road, but they're probably mostly confused about the down lane. But there's an up lane.
And it's having to mention all the overarching alignments with the seat and the instep and the transportation plan and the OCP. There's all kinds of stuff that's wrapped up in that has not even been touched today. Well, never even been talked about. So it's not like moving motor vehicles in and out of town centers smoothly and efficiently isn't the only objective, right? There are other objectives, and some of those are safety, some of those are cleaner air, more sticky streets where people want to be and feel safe walking.
Moving people, move 50
Lowering
people in a bus.
GHG emissions, moving more people on the bus more efficiently, increasing mode share, all of those things captured in all of those 10 documents that you listed in the report.
The list is there, what you need to do.
It's all
I'm
there.
prepared to still finish the meeting as it is, and people can carry on the conversations afterwards, because that's seeming like a more informal back and forth. The council had well-reasoned commentary in the meeting, and so you're free to follow up with any member of council about their reasons for or against different aspects of it. All I'll say is that the council unanimously put it back to staff to come forward with other different
Not
points.
removing Carlene over the.
And that was well within their options that they had before them at that time. Council, we have completed the business of the meeting.
Still have
Oh,
one more
Kilmer.
item.
We have Kilmer.
Public comment.
We have not completed the business of the evening.
That's why I'm sitting
I'm
here
not
going through
there.
public input, because I totally forgot about Kilmer.
Kilmer.
Okay.
Starting the process on Kilmer to engage with the community about what they want to see or their ideas. Okay.
Quick comment from staff on Kilmer.
I will do a quick,
You can,
I'll just do a quick one here, I know we're at 8:30. So effectively, this year was the first candidate for our new traffic calming program. Delbrook, as one of the individuals from public commentary has identified, was the pilot for this year. Going through the feedback that we've received, Kilmer, between Hoskins and Mountain, received the most number of responses over the period of soliciting inputs. Staff are recommending that to be the candidate for us to look forward, to look at for traffic calming measures for 2025, and that involves a really robust community engagement process. We have some lessons from this year's process that we can incorporate into improving this program.
And
You
you
just
sat here,
quickly say-
but
Sorry, Council.
we have our staff member as well that needs to talk, because he sat here the whole night and not said a word. I want to hear what he sounds like.
Can you just at least start with why Kilmer is at the top of the pile for you?
Yeah, so the reason for the why, so the traffic calming program, we separated out from road safety. Road safety is about data and crash history and all that stuff in terms of the science for road safety. Traffic calming is usually from resident input and feedback. So what are people seeing on their streets, but data isn't necessarily saying. And so this is where this particular program responds to where we're hearing the most number of unique respondents back to us. Kilmer had 36, substantially higher than the second corridor that we heard from for 2025. Yeah, it's all resident based in terms of input and feedback.
And would you say that the feedback from the residents on that, obviously Kilmer is a very, very busy soccer field. And when I see Kilmer backed up, it's largely driven by a full booking of the soccer fields. Is that your reflection of what you've seen on it? Because it doesn't have a commuter pattern issue, it has a recreational pattern issue.
Yeah, so in terms of what we're hearing from the community, they're able to identify on our webpage that we open, they're able to identify corridors of concern, so this being the corridor and key intersections and cross streets of concern. So in addition to what you discussed very little, the intersections of Hoskins Road and Mountain Highway were specifically mentioned by the community as being areas of concern in terms of their perceived safety and the speeding that residents were witnessing. So it's really going out to the community and saying staff can't be everywhere at once, we can't have data being collected everywhere at once, where do you think there are problems? And there was a large group of people focusing on Kilmer Road for this year.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Canary and Forbes.
And so what is the process gonna look like once we pass this?
The guy's been here for 2 weeks.
Well, you've been here 2 weeks.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me do
Should
this.
be an old app.
There.
There we go, there you go.
So I think it's gonna be a systems-based approach. So we're gonna go to the community, hear what they have to say, take the lessons learned from Delbrook, go back to the community, tell them what we're gonna do, and then build on that and hopefully demonstrate success through a community-based approach.
And then how do you keep council sort of informed as to what you're gonna do? Just so we know when we get people communicating with us. That's
What we'll do
the
is,
surprise part.
so this process, similar to what we do in Delbrook, we do a design charrette, so we bring everyone to the table. And we've received really positive feedback in terms of how we approach that this year. We'll inform council when that session will be happening. And then as the outcomes in terms of what are some key themes that we heard, we'll also share with council saying, here's generally what we're hearing from the design charrette process. We go away, we try not to over-engineer this as much as possible. We try to do what the community is asking us to do, as long as we can sign off on it. So that's kind of one of the key pieces here is what the community is wanting to say. As long as from an engineering perspective, we can accommodate that, we try and do that for a particular corridor. And then we'll report back to the community. One of the pieces that we probably could have improved on this year was as an outcome of the design charrette and the design itself, was having a better report back process to the residents on that specific block. So that's a lesson learned from this year. And we'll provide an update to council saying, here's what we've heard, here's what we're doing, and when. So,
Then they post on Facebook and say, councillors, come and drive the roads, come and see what's going on, tell us what's happening. Okay, good, all right.
Councillor Vaughn, did you have a comment? Oh, it was Councillor Forbes. There you go.
Just to back up to the beginning, how did you solicit these? Was it just on the webpage?
yeah, so we obviously receive a lot of inquiries from residents on every day. And so as soon as we start to see someone reach out to staff saying like, hey, I'm concerned about speeding, it's usually the biggest thing, or perceived safety concerns, we let them know saying like, hey, we have this program. If you're interested, there's a form online, put it in, tell your neighbours as well if you've got common concerns. So that's kind of how we typically share it. There's a website set up for it and everything. And so that's the main focus and way in which we try to get people to put in their kind of requests.
And maybe just, can I add on top of that? We also really try and direct people to that webpage. So I had a resident, actually with the Kilmer Street itself, reach out to me and say, this is a cumbersome process. Like, I'm trying to come up with a petition that is just right around the time that we're unveiling this program. And he said, there has to be a better way than me going around to all my neighbors with a piece of paper and signing something. And so what we have on the webpage is really a reflection of that, of trying to make it quick and simple and easy and saying, if I get an email, if my neighbor tells me whatever the source of input is to get everybody to use that tool, that way there's no large effort onus being put on one person to go around and do it. It's open
More
source,
efficient.
more efficient.
But the oddity is I get more emails about Dempsey than I do about Kilmer. Councillor Forbes.
But I think that might be with the as the program rolls out and there's more general awareness, we'll see more people using the tool.
Councillor Forbes.
That's my concern, awareness. A lot of people don't go on the website. A lot of people have gotten tired of it not being very friendly. I know we're improving it, but they've gotten really tired of trying to find anything. Can I make a suggestion? I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I do. If you've got something new that you're putting up on the webpage and it's something important, like you're talking about, that you want feedback on, please also notify the councillors, because we're the front line to the public. And if we don't get the information at least a little bit beforehand, we get the phone call saying, what the heck is going on? And we go, I don't know, but I'll call you back. So if you're putting anything up, any new web page up where you want community feedback, please let council know that the web page is there.
Councillor Back.
So with Delbrook, we selected the top part of Delbrook because we thought we could go implement a lot more with the budget that we have, which I think is 200,000. As we heard from Mr. Parslow tonight, a lot of the issues happen in the bottom section of Delbrook. Just wondering if we use the whole budget for the top section, or if there are any funds left over that could potentially be applied to deal with the bottom section of Delbrook.
Yeah, so we're still getting invoices in from the work that we've done on Delbrook, but we're fairly confident it's going to come in on the budget. And so what we're going to just do from an operational perspective, we're coming back to repave Delbrook next year anyway. So what's out there is temporary line marking anyway. And so when we come back next year, we may extend it south. I think there'll be enough funds to be able to accommodate that without impacting a 2025 traffic calming program, but we will go away and help that.
So
Which part of it is temporary?
yeah, all the markings above, you're gonna
Line markings. Yeah.
You're
It's
gonna
part of-
pave over them?
As part of asset management it is, but they've all been put down as temporary line.
in paint instead of thermoplastic, so it's much cheaper when it's, if it was permanent, we would put it down in thermoplastic, which is a lot more expensive. But there was no value in putting thermoplastic at this time because we knew we were gonna repave the road. So it's actually a good pilot to see. I've already driven it and seen what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
It gives us an opportunity to tweak the design a bit to make it better the next.
That was a save right there. That was a save.
When is the top coat being put back in place? Like when are you replacing the top coat of the blacktop?
Next summer is when we're paving the road.
Okay, that's fair. Councillor Beck.
There was a point, you made the point about maybe having learned that we could report back a little bit better, because we heard that as well from some of the residents that were part of the design charrette. They contributed their ideas, but didn't really get a report back in terms of what the solution was finalized before it happened. And then finally, has there been any thought to the name of the program and the positioning of the program as being traffic calming versus safe streets, or something that really is more inclusive, less divisive? That I think, this traffic calming is about slowing down cars, which I think immediately it can elicit a certain response from members of the public. I'm wondering if we've given any thought to just rebranding this program and doing it going forward.
We could certainly go away and working with comms and others figuring out if there's a better title for the program. We're not positional on what the program is called, so we can certainly take that away.
I would definitely support that. I think that would be beneficial, and just in terms of some of the response that we get.
Okay, Councillor Funk.
I would support that. I think it definitely needs to have a name change and needs to be something to do with safety, because that's what it is. And I just wanted to get clarification on the lower part of Telford, because that is where it's at its worst. Are you saying that is going to be dealt with next year?
That's the goal. It's subject to budget going that far. We have a degree of confidence that it could. It's line marking. That's one of the great benefits of the program, is that it's cheap and easy to implement. So we'll go away. I'll work with the team and figure out how we extend this. That's our goal as well.
Well, that sounds very iffy.
Nope, it sounded like that's the intent.
Yeah, that's our goal.
All right,
Are
Councillor
we
Ray.
happy with that? Okay, all right, thank you.
Did we reset the traffic calming program? Because I know Strathcona has been requesting traffic calming for years, and it would be really nice to know where they fit into this. I bet there's way more than 36 responses from Strathcona.
So in terms of launching the program, we didn't do an extensive research to go back through RAP and reopen cases and try and pick a line in the sand to draw in terms of when things came in. But what we're going to do is going forward, all of these requests, we'll roll them forward for a number of years. So anything we received in 2025 for the streets that aren't selected tonight, those requests will be rolled forward to 2026 and 2027. So we'll try and do a better job of bringing all that information in one house and starting to document it. But no, cases that were one-off and had come in from previous years, staff did not go back and try and tally those to integrate them into the recommendations.
Because Strathcona's not even on that list.
Correct, because it's all generated by the community. So I'm not sure if
Yeah, they can't, it's sort of like not very fair that, did we tell the community, hey, we've reset this program, we're not going back, how do you, there has to be some recognition of the work and the time that they took. They followed exactly what we asked them to do, and now because we've reset the program and started something new, they're off the list and at the back of the line and have to start all over again. Like I think that we have to reconcile that.
We can look at that.
Yeah, we can take that away and look at it. Once we start to open that type of piece, we're talking probably hundreds, if not thousands of RAMs, but we'll take that away and
But
figure
there was requests made far before RAP was ever conceived.
Which is the point.
I take this point though, that there was also for Brim or Dempsey for 15th Street in Norgate, like
No, but
every community's been campaigning for a very long time.
But they just followed the process that we had, so somehow we have to reconcile that. And I guess the last thing is, we did bring a motion forward about high-vis thermoplastic, the reflective. We haven't heard much about that. I think there is, especially Lower Delbrook, I did drive it. I drove it at night. when it was first put in. And when you get down to the bottom of the hill, just before it crests, before the tennis courts, and lights are coming up, it's super hard to see the center line. And I think it's areas like that that really could use that high vis. You don't need a lot of it, but it's just those LED lights are brutal. And it kind of blinds you, right? Same with off the second narrows on Dollarton at Main there. The way the water pools, you can't see, even if the lines are there, you can't see them when the water pools and the light reflects. So are we gonna have to be reporting back on that in key places?
Yeah, we can report back on in key places. We've been testing some products this year. Nothing's really hit it perfectly, so we can certainly report back.
But the reflective is what was asked for, so have we tested that anywhere?
We're trying, I believe it's a 3M product. And we're also launching, some new cat-sized programs in the spring, but we'll report back to council in terms of that motion.
Okay, thank you. Now we really have gone full time.
Okay, move adjournment.
Okay, all right. I don't think we need a particular motion. I mean, if you want the motion to receive information, we are assembled, we can do that, but I don't think that matters.
Is this
Okay,
information?
so I will accept adjournment. Councilor Murray's offered, I accept. Thank you all very much. Thank you to staff for the preparation of the meeting materials for our consideration, and thank you for everybody's patience and listening to everybody. Have yourselves a great week and a good night.